Mrs. Friedman, would you please tell us your story between the years 1939 and 1945?
I was born in Czechoslovakia. The village was Aric. And in 39, really, we got occupied by the Hungarians. We lived in Czechoslovakia where we didn't know we only knew from a democracy. We didn't know what other countries meant to us. And when we were occupied by Hungarians, they really came to us and let us know that how good we had it, because by then we didn't have it so good. The Hungarians were really anti-Semites to us. And we only realized really when they took away our freedom what it meant. We didn't realize, especially when we were children, we didn't realize it. But in 39, we got occupied by the Hungarians, and they were really started that Jewish people couldn't travel on trains, and but the jobs interfered, and we had a lot of problems. And with people would work with the Jewish people. We couldn't travel from one city to the other, and they took away our freedom, and we realized what we lost. Then they took in 41. They took for my immediate family. They took 20 people away, and we knew right away that when they took them away, that they wouldn't come back. And a couple months later, we found out that in Poland they killed them. At that time, we didn't realize and we didn't know that there are camps, because they didn't allow us to read papers and things. Especially in our village, we didn't know how big the problem is. That was in 41. And things became very bad. To me personally, it was very bad. I went away from home because my mother died and my father couldn't support. We were 6 children. One of my older sisters came to the United States, but we were 5 children. My father couldn't support, so I went away someplace to work and to help to support the family. But in 43, my father insists that I should stay home. He doesn't want me to go. He was afraid I should go, that something's going to happen to me. So I stayed home, and for Pesach I came home. And Pesach time it was that we found out that they're going to take us away too, everybody. So they came to our village one morning, and they took us to the ghetto. They took away. In our village weren't much people. We were about 25 families. And they took us first to ghetto that it was named Orshava, another village. It was like a little town. They took us to Orshava, and they took from all around. We stayed there until they took together all the people. And we stayed there. We still had food from home. They allowed us to. It was a terrible thing. They allowed us to take everybody only a certain amount, like 20 pounds. So we took, and I remember when they came to my home, a teacher of mine came with the police, and I had a little silver ring. It really didn't amount to much, but he says, take off that ring. He was my teacher, and I was terribly hurt that he took off the ring from my finger. But the principal was very nice. He says, take whatever you want from the house, because you don't know where you're going. So we came, they put the lock. My father was that was the first time that I saw my father, that he knew that he will never return. They put a lock on the house, they took us in wagons, and they took us away. And we came to the ghetto. That time we stayed for a week in that ghetto, and then they rounded us up again, and they took us to Munkac. Now Munkac was already a bigger ghetto. They took us together, a lot of people. Food they didn't give us. We built our own little shacks. It didn't amount really to much, but we built the shacks, and we stayed in the food, and I was at that time, I personally was with my father and with my two sisters and 2 brothers. My 2 sisters survived, my 2 brothers didn't survive. They were too young. And even today, if I talk about my 2 brothers, I have one son that his name is Michael. My other son is Ira, but my brother was Michael, and to my other younger son, I always relate the name. Even today when I talk, I say Michael, I relate to my brother, not to my son. If I say Michael, I say Elko, the name of my... So we had there very difficult times. We were 3 weeks there. My father was a very religious man, and they cut off his beard, and it was to us, he got sick. Now I think that he had at that time a heart attack. But they took him to a place where doctors from our people looked over, and they said that his heart is weak. But later I found out that he doesn't eat the food. He takes the food and he gives them to the boys, to my brothers. So he was so weak that we later realized. So we girls tried my father not to let to go no place, because the police and the Germans were always aiming after the man. They used to go, that was their pleasures, to go into hitting the man. So we always used to shelter my father, he shouldn't go. The day when they took us from the ghetto, one of my sisters, we took my father between us, in case they aimed for my father, so they took a big stick and they wanted to hit my father, so the stick landed on my arm. I was in camp already 3 months, my arm was still swollen from that. So after 3.5 weeks, the ghetto was very, very bad, because that time we ran out of food already. We didn't have any food. And we couldn't wash ourselves, we couldn't clean ourselves, and people became sick. And they took the boys, always the boys, and they took let's say from every family, they took a boy or a girl, and they said, if you're not going to do that, we're going to shoot them. At the ghetto, I never saw they should kill anybody. At Munkaj. They used to kill, or they used to take the boys in the water. We had like a little river. So they took the boys and they used to push the heads into the water until, that's the game the Germans used to play. After that, they took us, we were there 3 weeks, they took us to Auschwitz. They put us together in wagons like cattle. We were about 150 people. They put it in one wagon. People didn't ask for food. People didn't ask for water. We just asked for air. We didn't know where they take us, when they put us in the wagons, what they're going to do with us. But at that time, they took us with my father, my sisters, my brothers, and we went. For 3 days, the trip took us 3 days. We thought we never survived that trip. When we came to Auschwitz, we didn't know what Auschwitz is. We never heard of Auschwitz. We never heard what they do there. So they start to separate us from my father. So they took my father, my brother on one side, me and my sisters on the other side. We had also an aunt with her children came with us. So when they separated us, we didn't know. My father said, maybe tonight we get together. So we had a piece of a few candies. So we said to my father, we don't need it, you take it with you. He didn't want, but we put it in his pocket anyhow, because he was so weak that time already. So they took away. We never saw my father, my brothers again. They took us to a place in Auschwitz they called the beds. And when we came there were men that they cut they took off our hair, they cut off our hairs. And at that time, a lot of people lost each other, like sisters, because we went into one room with the beds, they cut off our hair. When you take a piece and you cut off the hair, the piece looks very different. When we come out through the other door, we didn't recognize each other. And we lost each other. I was very lucky. I was always with my sisters. We were very, very lucky because through so many things that we went through, we three survived. So they cut off our hair, and I remember at that time a man came over to me and I asked him, what's with our parents? And he realized that I'm so naive and I don't know what's happening. So he didn't want to tell me. Even he says he's already 5 years there in Auschwitz. He survived 5 years Auschwitz, and you don't know what Auschwitz is? I says, no. So he says, where are our parents? He says, you're gonna see. But he did not tell me what. He just told me that I'm gonna see. He did not want to tell me that, that I'm so naive and I don't know what happened to our. But when we went out from there, a woman came, also that she was in Auschwitz. She says, you mean you don't know what's happening to your parents? We said, no. He says, your parents are not alive anymore. They burned them already. I says, you crazy. You out of your mind. And we just went away. We didn't want to listen to her, that what happened to our parents. This was an unbelievable thing. How can you take people away from a home and take them and just destroy them? This was an unbelievable thing. Nobody could have believed that. So they took us and they put us in barracks, 12. They made like little shacks we had, and they put like 12 in one place, in one. So they came to us with a bowl. They gave for the 12 of us one bowl of soup. We says, you crazy, we're not gonna eat that soup. So the gypsies, the other people came and they grabbed the soup, and they were so thin and so they looked so bad. And we say, how come that, what happened? What is happening here? But it didn't take long and we realized that what was happening. But during the night we knew already when they came, we knew already what's going on, that a terrible thing had happened to us. And we stayed there 3 days. They didn't let us go like once a day to the bathrooms. If you had to go or not, once a day you went, they took us to the latrines. And we found out through other people that what's going on already. And after 3 days, they took us again to the beds, and they shipped us to Plaszow, to Krakow, to a camp. That was supposed to be a working camp. There were Polish Jews. The camp calls itself Plaszow, but it was really on the Krakow cemetery. The barracks, things, everything was built from the Metsevas. And they worked there. They had like a few factories. They made factories, some from bread. They used to bake breads. They used to do a few things for the army. It was an SS-Bekleidung, and it was the Madrich. There was a few factories there, and the Polish people worked, and they brought a couple thousand of our girls to work there. So when we arrived there, it was very hot. We weren't used to the climate, and our heads were shaved off, and the sun was burning, and they took us up to a hill without water, without food. It was a terrible experience. And it took about 4 or 5 hours until they took our names and everything, until they processed us to go to the barracks. When we came to the barrack again, they brought us soup, which nobody ate because we were exhausted from the trip, and some of the girls were hysterical. What happened? And the Polish Jewish people came to us. They came with bread, and they said, maybe you're hungry, maybe we could help you. We didn't realize that they knew already. They were already 5 years in the camps. They knew the problems already. So they came to help us. They brought us water And they tried, really, the Jewish people tried there to help. And we worked there for 3 months. Things in that camp wasn't, as far as physically, wasn't too bad. The only bad thing was about it that there were Strafkommandos. And if we got assigned to the Strafkommandos, those days were terrible. One day they assigned us to a Strafkommando. It was on Schwoz. We were already about 3 weeks that time in that camp. I know it was Schwoz. I don't know the date, but it was Schwoz. And they assigned us, and it was a Jewish boy, was a capo. And he said, if you see me next time, don't come to me because I am a capo from a Strafkommando. And we were 50 girls, and they gave us to carry racks on a hill. There were really no purpose for carrying the rack, just we should do something, so they gave us to carry racks. I had a sister who was 14 years old. She was not developed, she was very young. So my sister and we always took her in between us, and if the German didn't see, I took the rack and carried to my other sister that my young sister shouldn't have because it was too hard on her. So we didn't realize the German observed what we were doing. He claimed that we didn't do enough work. So he came and he said to the Jewish boy, to the capo, he should hit us. He took such a whip. He says, you have to hit him. The capo says, I am not going to put a hand on my Jewish girls. He says, you're going to hit him. And he says, I am not going to hit him. And he had the German Shepherd. He says, if you're not going to hit the girls, I let the German Shepherd on you. He says, I am not going to do it. So he took the German Shepherd, and he says, you go after him. And we pleaded with the boy, hit us. To us it wouldn't happen. If you're going to whip us once or twice, nothing will happen. And the German Shepherd went and he just tore pieces from the boy, and he wouldn't hit us. He would not he says, I'm not going to put a whip on a Jewish girl, never. If I die, I'm not going to do it. They took away to the hospital, the boy, we never knew what happened to him. He never came back to work. And other incidents like that happened, but otherwise it was as far as work, it wasn't too bad. But if we hit like the Strafkommando, then it was very bad. Then later September, they took us again, 150, and it was 100 again in a cattle wagons, and again back to Auschwitz. And when they took us to Auschwitz, from Auschwitz to Krakow, it took us a half hour. From Krakow to Auschwitz again, it took us 3 days because they couldn't go the same road because the Russians were after them. So they had to go other roads, so it took us 3 days. And those 3 days were the most horrible days of my life. By the time we arrived to Auschwitz, from the 150, about 45 died, and they were dead with us in the train. And when we came down from the train, when we finally reached the destination, Auschwitz, the German guards they gave them hot coffee and wine and everything. They were drinking, spelling out that we should look what they drinking. And our girls, it was water near the trains, like it was, holes, and they were filled up with water. And when they let us out, our girls ran to the water. And while they were running to the water, the Germans used to shoot the girls. And that time, for the first time, I saw the shooting. Before I didn't see. I saw in Krakow and Plaszow, they told us also one day, we had to carry to a wood. We didn't know where to carry the wood. So when we came to a big hall where we carried the wood, we saw they were shooting people, and we had to throw the wood on the people, that they should burn the people. So that was also a very horrible experience, because we didn't know if the next we're not going to be, because we were usually, they used to shot witnesses. If we were witnessing the things, they were shot. Those people weren't Jewish. They brought in hostages from someplace, and they were shooting them in the camp, and we had to throw the wood on them and burn them. There was a man that took off the teeth and the boots from them, and we had to throw the wood. So this, when we came to Auschwitz, they were shooting the girls. That was my second that I witnessed to shot how they were shooting the girls. And we came to the camp. They took us back to those beds, and they shaved again our hair off. We had a little hair already. They shaved us again. And we stayed in. And my sister told me, let's go first. We were always afraid to go first because we didn't know if they don't take us to the crematoriums. And it was already by 5, they undressed us. That was about 9 o'clock in the morning we arrived. They undressed us. And we were supposed to go into the beds. They kept us. It was 5 o'clock already. And at night, at 5 o'clock late in the afternoon, and it was in September. And they didn't have a chance to take us all in process with the beds, with everything. So they wanted to take us into a place where we should stay overnight. But when they took us, we were all in the nude. We were afraid that we were in the nude. They take us someplace. We were sure they take us to the crematorium. So we started to run. We didn't know where to run. So there were Jewish men also, like couples. They said, please, I promise you girls, we take you only overnight to someplace. You're not going no place. But we were sure at that time they take us to the crematoriums. So we start to run. But the man started rounding us up, and they took us to a place where it was only a walls. It was just like a big barrack with no walls. And it was a September night, and it was terribly, it was already cold. We were completely in the nude till in the morning, till about 8, 9 o'clock in the morning when they came. So the only thing that we warmed us each other up, that we stayed close. We were about 2,000 girls close to each other, and that's how always those who were on the outside we took in to warm. Only that we warmed each other up with the bodies. And in the morning they took and they gave us water, and they took us again, and they bathed us, and they took us to the barracks. They gave us some food that time already. So we stayed in Auschwitz again for 3 weeks. We were in Birkenau. That was when they took us to that camp. They took from gypsies out from that camp, and they put them in the crematorium. And we stayed there for 3 weeks. We didn't know from one day to the other what's going to happen. But a few incidents happened with my sister, with my younger sister, from the 40-year-old. Because she was so small and she wasn't developed, they always came for her that she's young, because she's a child, and they always wanted to take her away. And we went through a terrible thing to keep her in Auschwitz. They shouldn't take her away from us. A couple times they took her away and they put her between children. And we disguised ourselves, and we went to the barrack inn, and we stole her. And once she ran out. And a couple times that happened, that they took her away from us, and we always tried, and thank God she's with us, we saved her. And after 3 weeks, there was a girl that her mother, they took her mother away a long time ago, and she was in another camp. And she heard that her daughter is with us. She was in Auschwitz already a year. So she came, and that reunion, that I will never forget, that reunion between mother and daughter. And she said to her, they're planning to take you away to a working camp. You're going to have it good. Please, I cannot go with you, but please go. She didn't want to go because she wanted to stay with the mother. But the mother insisted. She says, I found out because I'm working in an office. and I found out that you 400 girls gonna go from you. So they took us one day, again, they undressed us again in the nude, and they picked out from the 2,000 girls, they picked out 400 girls that they checked especially the eyes and the hand. We must have good hands and good eyes. And they took us to Oberschlesien-Neustadt. We went through again the beds, the process, everything, the shaving, and they took us, they dressed us, and they gave one a short dress, one a long dress. But the way they equipped us from there to go, it was just unbelievable. But they took us to Oberschlesien-Neustadt, we came there. And to my amazement, when we came there, how nature is, how they watched us, that we should have good hands and good eyes. Between the 400, we had 2 girls that they had no hands. One didn't have the fingers, and one didn't have till the wrist. To today, we can't figure out how that happened, but I guess survival is very, very important, and we don't know how it happened, but they came. And they came, and we tried to arrange that time that they should work. We worked in a factory where they made towels and a linen and a waving factory. And we arranged that those 2 girls should stay and clean the place where we stayed. They shouldn't, because they couldn't work. We had to produce 3 times as much as the German girls. And we worked 16 hours a day in the factories, but they gave us better food already that time, because they need the work, so we had to produce it. They gave us good food. What I mean is good food. They gave us bread, they gave us soups twice a day, and we had a place where it was a big apartment house, and we stayed there 400 girls, but we were naturally with electric wires, but it was in the city. And one of our girls died. We didn't know for what she died. It was like a mysterious death. She died. So she died, and we made a funeral. They allowed us that she should have a funeral. The girls between us were very educated girls educated in every way. Some of the girls were so educated in Hebrew that when it came in Yom Kippur, they knew by heart all the davening, and we davened and we fasted, and they were really very, very, we had a very educated group there. And so the girl who died had a funeral, a woman who knew everything what to do, and we buried her according to the Jewish law, and we marked where she is and her name, that sometimes we survive, if we find somebody, we should know where and what. We also had in that camp, they weren't too much after us, like we worked, and they weren't like punishing us. But we had a doctor, and the doctor, for some reason, must have either a nervous breakdown, something, because she couldn't function. We had sick people, she couldn't take care of them. Whenever we used to go, and I used to say to her, somebody got sick, she says, if somebody got sick, she says, and if I don't have a blanket. So we knew that something is wrong with her, because she doesn't make sense. So the SS woman said, we must have a doctor. She goes back to Germany. So we said she could function as a dentist, and really we could persuade them that they should keep this doctor, even she wasn't right, and they brought from Auschwitz another doctor. They brought us from Auschwitz another doctor. So we were again 400, because one died. So we really, those few months there that we didn't have it too bad. The only thing we had to work, but between though we went, they made us boys go and made bunkers for us. So when we made the bunkers, I went to the German, I put myself up to courage, and I said, if the girls working so hard, how about we should get them more soup? So he says, all right, so you're going to be the leader between them. I did not want to be the leader because I knew that if I'm any kind of a leader, then my two sisters, if they're going to go away, I will stay and they will separate us. But I said no, so he gave me a few smacks, so I didn't say nothing. So they put me up, I took care of 200 girls. That was a Neustadt. And we were two girls that we stayed. We took care on the barracks, we took care on the laundry, we took care on the food, we took care on most for the 400 girls and the needs. But with us, we also had those two girls that helped without a hand, and not other two girls that they really weren't capable to go to the weaving factory, that they helped us. So we had like two Stundendiensten for each of us. When the Gestapo when the Germans found out that those two girls are without a hand, the one who didn't have a hand was a friend of ours, and they were three sisters. So he says they're going to Auschwitz. So my friend came to me, she says, you are the only one who could go talk to the German, please. So I was afraid, but again I got courage and I went to the German and I says, look, she's a very good worker. She could work very good in here in the barracks. She could make beds, she could clean toilets, she could work very hard. He says, look, if she's not going to do good the work, then you should know you have to go to Auschwitz with her. So I came home and I told my friend. Thank God my friend survived, and she lives in Philadelphia, she has 3 babies. We remain even closer friends. We were always very close, but from then on we were even closer. We worked together. They were 3 sisters and we were 3 sisters. We worked together wherever we went. We helped each other in every way we can. But this woman, but she doesn't have the finger, she lives in Philadelphia now, thank God, with 3 children. And she was always very grateful that I went to talk to the German about her. And I hope that I was some kind of a shaliach for her too. And then we were there till January the 20th. I know that it was January the 20th because it was my birthday. And my friends and all of them, they really said, what a birthday you have. They took us again at night and they had to evacuate us because the Russians came closer. So we walked from Oberschlesien Neustadt to Großrosen. It was, the Germans used to say that it was never so cold. They remember for 20 years such a cold weather as that time. We wrapped ourselves in a blanket. We had very poor shoes, very poor clothing. We walked day and night because the Russians came closer and we had to go. But food was like that. If they had a chance, then they really tried to give us food, but they didn't have a chance. If we passed a village from Czechs, or it was like not German people, it was more other people, then they used to throw us a potato, carrot, or anything. But if we passed a German village and we went to take where the pigs were drinking water, a little water, they wouldn't let us have the water. So I always think of that, and I swore that if I ever liberate, I would never want to step, my feet will never go back to Germany. And we came to Großrosen, we stayed there for 3 weeks. From there we went to Mauthausen. We were overnight in Dachau, and from there they took us again on wagons, so we came to Bergen-Belsen. I had a cousin with me, and I said to my cousin, what's going to be now? She says, for here we don't go. Either we get liberated or we die. And I really never lost myself too much during the war. But when we walked from Oberschlesien-Neustadt, we walked and we came to a middle of a field, and the German said, "There says, man, you have to sleep here." And I says, my God, how it's frozen, everything, how can we sleep here? We can't even stay here. We have to walk, not to freeze. So I start to cry, and I says, my God, how can you let that thing like that should happen to us? So they drove us in. We start to scream, and we were 400 people. So they drove us into where animals were, to a barn. And there were cows, and there were animals. There were horses. One side were horses, and one side were cows. And we were so exhausted, and we lay down between the animals. The animals didn't move all night. They didn't move all night because we were 400 girls. They were in place. So I always felt that animals were better to us than the Germans. And in the morning we left. So we came to Bergen-Belsen. And in Bergen-Belsen we were 3 horrible months. Every day was a horror. We went into one room. We went into that room 74 people. From the 74 we survived 8. That doesn't mean that we were only 74. They always poured in more. But by the end, they don't even took out the dead people anymore. They were just in one corner, and we were in another corner. Between the 8 that survived, we were lucky, the 3 sisters and a cousin. I always think that only because we were so close together and we took care of each other, that's why we survived. Otherwise, I don't think we would have survived. But another thing that I would like to say, that when we came on Bergen-Belsen, we couldn't work anymore. We were too weak and too sick. We all had typhoid fever. We were very sick. But one day a German came, and once we should go to work. So they grabbed me and other 2 people to go to work. So we went, and they took us in a room where there were a lot of old clothes. And we had to take the old clothes and put in wagons and take them somewhere else. And we went into that room, and between the old clothes there were little dead babies. When I saw those babies, I says, my God, is that what you're doing to your people? That they cannot even be buried? They cannot think, is this what happened to some Yiddish folk? I lost completely control out of myself. I worked, I couldn't work. They took me back to my place. And I was completely, it shook me up. The room was full of dead people. But it shook me up more, the dead babies, than I saw, because Bergen-Belsen was full of dead people. It was called the dead camp. We were called the dead camp. And to my children, I never feel, I can't even talk. I can't go in deep to talk about the camp. Maybe I don't want to hurt them so much. Maybe I don't want they should know. They know, but maybe I don't want they should know my personal feeling. I get myself very, very sick when I talk about it. But I feel I have to talk about it. Somebody has to know too. For the future, from our people, what happened. I'm not the only one that tells it, but from my experience, for me, I have to tell it the way I know. And I would like it should be known for the future.
Okay.
So we were sick in Bergen-Belsen. We were already, nobody worked there already. There was a lot of, we didn't know we're going to get liberated. We heard every day somebody else. I personally couldn't walk. It was already about 2 weeks before the liberation that I couldn't even walk. I couldn't stay. But that friend, that she didn't have a hand, that I helped her in Auschwitz, she used to come every day in and bring a little water for me, for my sisters. And she was physically better than we were. She only didn't have the hand, but she was physically better than we were. And I didn't walk. And also we had, from our village, a little girl every day came in and she says, tomorrow probably we get liberated. We knew we're going to be liberated from somebody or we die, but we didn't know that the Germans will give us a chance we should be liberated. Because we heard a lot of times that before a camp was liberated, they just destroyed it. So we really didn't know what's going to happen to us. But one night we listened, they were shooting from all over. So we knew that we were on the front. The sky was red from the fire, and they were shooting. And we were like laying, we didn't know when we were going to get hit. We heard screams, we heard all kind of noises. We knew that in the near future something will happen. And all night we didn't know if they were singing because not far from us was a camp from where the men were. So we knew something must have happened with that camp because we didn't know if they were singing or they were crying. We heard a lot of noise. And all of a sudden in the morning, that little girl didn't come in to tell us that, don't worry, we're going to be liberated. So my friend came in and she said she wouldn't come in anymore. She died. I couldn't believe that little girl died. She was so good always with us. And about 9 o'clock we heard, they said, ladies and gentlemen, you were liberated by the English Second Army. Whoever could go out, went out. They took grass and they threw on them because they said we have no flowers, the grass. But we still saw the Germans. The Germans didn't disappear. So we were afraid that the Germans still are in power. But the Germans had put up the white flag and we got liberated by the English, by the Second Army. When we heard they said, ladies and gentlemen, we didn't believe that a thing like that should again happen to us. We got liberated, but for some reason we didn't want to believe that we lost so much. We knew we lost a lot, but we didn't know that we had such a big loss that so many people we lost. We thought maybe there are somewhere camps that some older people survived or young children survived. I didn't want to believe that my father, my brothers didn't survive. It just couldn't happen. I had a brother was a 13-year, one was 11 years. I thought maybe somehow they survived. I was a year in camp and I knew what happened, but I didn't want to believe it. So from there, we still were about a week now in that Bergen-Belsen camp because they couldn't take us. We were still on the front. We were still afraid that the Germans we're going to lose. Germans will come back. But they took us and the soldiers gave up their lunch. They should serve us something to eat. And after everybody knows that after we got liberated, we lost a lot of people because we weren't taken care well. Somebody should have taken us to places, hospitals, but it was a war. They couldn't take care on the soldiers and on us. So the soldiers were first. And the girls died. After we were liberated. We lost. I think it was over 10,000 girls we lost after the liberation. That we were sure they could have been saved. And then they took us to Bergen-Belsen, to another Bergen-Belsen. That was the death camp, and they took us where the barracks were. And they start to take the weak girls in hospitals and to help us. But we always know that we would have get a little, even after the liberation, if they would have taken right away the girls, they would have been saved a lot of girls. I know a lot of girls that got sick. And just because the last days. I also would like to say that I have a friend that I don't think ever was mentioned, that this girl was a schoolmate of mine, and she never ate, she didn't want to eat treif. She was a year with me in camp, and she never ate treif. She only lived on bread and water. She didn't want to eat nothing. And she didn't survive, unfortunately, but she lived for almost till then. She was liberated. She saw the liberation, but she didn't survive. But I would like very much that friend of mine should be somewhere, somebody, because nobody from her family survived, that she never ate, only she lived on bread and water for a year. And we got liberated. And we were in Bergen-Belsen. A lot of the girls went to Sweden. They took to Sweden, but we stayed in Bergen-Belsen. From there we went to Zelle. They took the Czechoslovakian girls. They took to Zelle. In Bergen-Belsen, when we were liberated, then the English people came and they asked for help to be somebody should be helping them out. So the girls that we came from Neustadt tried to say that I was in charge till now, and they would like I should be in charge again. Girls until I didn't leave Bergen-Belsen, until I didn't go to Zelle. But I was in charge, and I tried at that time to see how many we survived from Oberschlesien and Neustadt. So I went with another girl, and we checked and we looked, and we checked out in the barracks that we survived. It was from the 400 we were survived in the 70s at that time. But the girls left to Sweden, and we lost a couple more. So that means that somewhere in the 70s, 72, 3, I don't know about that, because something about 76 was in the beginning, but we lost a couple more in Sweden. So as of that time, I think about 72 or something, 3, that we survived from the 400. That I wanted to say.
Mrs. Friedman, what ghetto were you in?
Munkar.
When were you there?
We arrived there, it was a week after Pesach, because they took us Pesach together. We were a week and it was in 44.
Were you in the same town before the ghetto was set up?
No, we came to Munkar, but we were Munkar's vicinity, so we came to Munkar's ghetto.
What anti-Jewish actions were taken before the ghetto was established, and when did they occur?
Well, we were rounded up by the Hungarians, by the Hungarian police. And really, when we came to the Munkacer ghetto, there were only 2 Germans in charge. The rest were Hungarian police in charge of us. And when we came already to the Germans, we said already, thank God for that. That's how the Hungarians were treating us.
Did any of your family live in the same ghetto with you?
My father and my brothers and my sisters. And I had another aunt with with 5 children which didn't survive.
What work did you do in the ghetto?
No work, and Munkater ghetto, I did no work.
Since your ghetto was in the same vicinity that your hometown was in, later on, did they bring other people in from other towns?
Yeah, actually the Munkater ghetto was only to bring together all the Jews at one place. That was only the purpose. They kept us only as long until they from all the villages they took all the people together.
How did the people who were originally from the area of Munkat view the people who they brought in from other areas?
When they took us from home, I know when we went with the trains, we passed by, we really didn't know exactly. They said, we'll call you through roads, we go. We didn't know where we're going. They took us to the ghetto and nothing. And we were hoping that there's going to be some kind of, people were talking, maybe some kind of things will happen that they will not take us, they'll take us back home. They wouldn't take us away. Some people thought that maybe it's 44, maybe it's going to be the end of the war, and they will keep us for a while and then they release us. Nobody thought that they will take us away from Munkat.
Were you allowed to leave the ghetto at first?
No, nobody was allowed to. They only took a few people to work in town, like baker. I know they took my cousin, a baker, to town to work, but she went under the police left. And
what was the approximate size of the ghetto?
Well, it was a factory from a brick factory. So it must have been not too big, and they got together, I don't know how many thousands Jews from all over. We were from all that vicinity. They got together, all the Jews. I don't know how many thousands there were. But it was very crowded. It was very, was in a little shack, was 2-3 families. In one little crowded place for 2-3 families. We had to share like, I don't know how many thousands actually there was.
Was there more than one ghetto in this town, or was it only the one ghetto?
Munkat was only one ghetto.
Was there any physical boundaries surrounding the ghetto, like a wall or a wooden fence?
No, we were guarded like by the police. Like every few feet there was a policeman, but no physical. There were no wires. There's no electric wires or something like that.
How was the guard at the gate organized?
Like I say, we had only 2 Germans were in charge of the ghetto. The rest of the police were Hungarians. And the Germans relied pretty good on the Hungarians because they did a pretty good job.
Did you have any knowledge of what went on outside of Nazi territory?
I had no knowledge, really. We had no knowledge because, like I say, previously we didn't, at home, we weren't allowed to, radios we didn't have. They didn't allow us to read papers. Our Jew was afraid to have a paper at home. So we really, my father, I guess, knew more than I did because he was a very, very educated, intelligent man. But I was a young girl and I really didn't pay too much attention to political life. The only time when they took us already, I knew already what the problems.
Did you send or receive letters from abroad?
No, we got the last letter from my sister at home, and then from the United States. But then from Auschwitz, when we were in Auschwitz, not in Munkat, in Auschwitz, everybody had to write a postcard to a relative. And we had to write postcards to somebody that we know. We wrote to our cousin the postcard, but we didn't realize they wanted to fool the people that this is like a resort, some kind of health resort or what that we're riding from. So everybody had to write. They forced us to write postcards, but the Munkat ghetto we didn't write.
When did you know the truth about the extermination?
The first time that I learned an Auschwitz from the woman, that a woman came over and she said that you will never see your parents again, they're going to burn them now. And we didn't believe it. We thought that she's so bitter because, you know, she talks like that, but we didn't believe it. But that was the first time that we heard of it.
And when did you first find out about the gas chambers?
Well, in Auschwitz we found out. The first time at home, we never, in the ghettos, we never knew. We really never knew, but we found out in Auschwitz.
Did you have any personal or family plans to escape from the ghetto?
No. I personally never had any plan to escape because we were so afraid that they're going to hurt the rest of the family, because if somebody escaped from a family, then we knew that the whole family, they say the whole family responsible for one or one for the family. So we were always afraid that if I do something, they're going to hurt my father or they're going to hurt my sister. So like, let's say I wouldn't dare go away because I was afraid of for the rest of the family.
And what did you eat in the ghetto, and how large were the rations?
In Munkacher ghetto, the Munkacher ghetto, there were some. We were already pretty hungry. They didn't serve food. Like there was a kitchen once a day. Somebody had to go for somebody had it. For somebody, like, let's say whoever pushed themselves went and got some food. Whoever didn't push didn't get. But I remember my brothers when we went and we bought some peels from potatoes, and we put up our own little fire, so we cooked the peels, and my brothers were always so hungry. They were always so hungry that sometimes I'm ashamed to eat that. There is so much food, and my brothers were so hungry, my father.
What was the size of the living space that you had in the ghetto?
It was built we built it ourselves from a few bricks. It was a brick factory. So we built it, without nothing, cement. We just put bricks together, and with sheets, we put the sheets we put on, and we slept on the floor. So as much space as we needed for ourselves to sleep on the floor. That's how big the place was.
How many people were in each apartment?
It wasn't apartments. It was, like I said, we slept on the floor, the little shack. So we slept, like, let's say, in our place that we built I had a man with 5 children, and my father, and we were 5. So we slept in the clothes, and there was nowhere to wash and nothing. That's why people got sick so fast, because people became dirty. You didn't have it to wash. It was really that ghetto couldn't exist too long. Something had to be done. So I guess they made that choice to take us very early away. Maybe if things wouldn't be so, bad in the ghetto, then maybe, I don't know. But things started to be very bad in the ghetto. There weren't any food, and we didn't have where to wash. We had to go. There was a little river, and everybody washed themselves in that river, and it was just terrible.
What were the cooking and sanitary arrangements?
There was no sanitary arrangements, no, like I say, there was only a kitchen which it could have maybe served a few people. It couldn't serve the whole ghetto, so everybody provided for themselves. Like some people, like, let's say, like I had a cousin when he was a baker, so they took him out in the city to a bakery, so if he could smuggle in a bread, he gave for my aunt, so we had a little bread. So we had to live on those provisions, whatever we could do. they couldn't bring in, like sometimes we thought that maybe the people gonna bring in, the Christian people gonna bring in food, but they didn't want to risk their lives to bring in food, so we had no food.
Was there any coal or wood available for heating?
No, there wasn't coal and it wasn't wood, and we used to scrap together for wood, take wherever even over that was problem, there wasn't enough to cook a little food. It was Pesach time, so it was after Pesach, the weather was already pretty warm, so the only thing we needed wood for cooking, to prepare some food, so we built our own, from bricks, we made our own ovens. We had made 4 bricks and put fire under and had a pot, and that's how we cooked.
What pre-war political parties were there?
Oh boy. There was no parties. There was only one party. I mean, the Hungarians, and that's it. You had to vote for. There was we had no right to vote or what, so there was only one party.
Who were the Jewish leaders in your town before 1939?
We were a small village, and we had really leaders. We had we had a name, Shmilher, that he was the head of, he was the most of the town, like from the Jewish people. And, we had my grandfather while he was alive, and there were others, they were a very small community, so everybody was the leader.
Did you have a Judenrat?
My father was a teacher, so he was also, did we have that?
Did you have a Judenrat?
No. Judenrat?
Yeah.
No.
How were the Jewish police appointed, the ordnance did?
In our ghetto, in our places, there was not. In Munkacher ghetto, they tried to take the Jewish boys and make policemen out of them, but they didn't succeed because the boys were very young boys, because the older boys they took to work, to the forced labor. So they were very young boys, so they couldn't make police out of either very young people. And there was also not time, because we were only 3 weeks in our ghetto. And in 3 weeks, they really couldn't accomplish much. They took us away from there.
Mrs. Friedman, please try to answer each of the questions for each of the camps that you were in. When did you arrive at the camp? Where did you come from? And how did you get there?
To Auschwitz, we arrived in 44. It was about 3 weeks after Pesach, because they took us the last day Pesach together. We were 3 weeks, so that means that about 3 weeks after Pesach we arrived to Auschwitz. Now in Auschwitz we were 3 days, and then we went to Krakow. And in Plaszow we were till about September. The beginning of September we arrived again in Auschwitz, and we stayed there for 3 weeks. So end of September we arrived to Oberschlesien-Neustadt. And we stayed there till January the 20th. In January 20th, we started to walk, and we walked to Grossrosen. It again took us, I don't know, it must have taken us about 2 weeks, maybe less, I don't remember. But I know that in Grossrosen we were for 3 weeks. And then we were 3 days to Mauthausen. That means that February we were in Mauthausen. And then they took us again on a train, and we were in Dachau for a day. So the end of February, they took us to Bergen-Belsen. So we arrived in February, and we stayed there till April the 15th. We got liberated.
Did you arrive alone in the camps or with members of your family?
I was always with my two sisters and a cousin. And when I came to Bergen-Belsen, so we were staying three sisters and a cousin. And when we arrived to Bergen-Belsen, we met other two cousins from another barrack. So they were also liberated with us, but they didn't live with us in one barrack. We couldn't bring them, they should stay with us in one barrack, but we got liberated together.
Was there a selection on your arrival?
In Auschwitz we had the selection. Both times when we came, the first time in Auschwitz that we were selected, the second time we were selected. In other camps we were not selected.
Did you know what the selection meant?
I did not know the first time, but the second time I knew.
Could you describe the camps that you were in and the size of them, what the type of guard system was, and when the camps were set up?
I know that Auschwitz, at that time I didn't know how, but people told, the people that were there, they told us that Auschwitz became when it started. Now I know that Plaszow was at that time, the people told us that they were 5 years already in Plaszow camp, so it was 5 years in existence. Then when we came also to other camps, they told us. Now, Bergen-Belsen started only when they started to evacuate the people. So then Bergen-Belsen became a camp. So I exactly don't know the times when and what, the dates.
How large were the camps?
Auschwitz was a very big camp. I don't know how many thousands of people were there, but it was a very large. It was Birkenau, and it was Zeelager, and Bier was all lagers. Plaszow was a big camp. Gross-Rosen was a big camp. All the camps were very big, but I actually don't know how large population there was, but they were all big camps.
How were the camps guarded?
They were all guarded by SS men. Only in Oberschlesien-Neustadt we had only 3 SS women and an Obersturmführer, and the rest was Wehrmacht. But all German guards were. We had all over German guards.
Do you remember the names of any of the commanders, officers, or men in the camps?
The names? I really don't remember.
How would you characterize these men?
I never met during the camp, let's say that they should be human to us, the men. I felt that sometimes if even they would sometimes abuse us just for the fun of it. They would, in Oberschlesien-Neustadt, we came 12 o'clock from work, so an assessment standing at the door used to hit us because our heads were shaved, so they didn't want the civilians to see our heads were shaved, so we wore white kerchiefs. So he was standing in the door and hitting us because our kerchiefs weren't put the right way. He didn't like the way we wore the kerchiefs. So their amusement was they want, let's say, their fun was to abuse us. So that's, I couldn't really say that, I don't even know how to describe, how to judge the people. I didn't even know that people like that exist in this world, that they should have fun to abuse another human being. been.
How many Germans guarded the camps?
I don't know in other camps because there were so many of them, but I know I only know in Oberschlesien and Neustadt we had 3 SS women. It was a Lagerführer, an Obersturmführer, and there were 12 guards that they accompanied us to work or from work.
Do you know how many of these guards were non-German?
They were all German.
Were the Germans SS or did they belong to other units?
In Oberschlesien, they were in Neustadt. They were only the Obersturmführer and the Lagerführer was SS. The rest was from the Wehrmacht. And the SS women were also SS. The women. We had 3 women.
Do you remember any incidents that could be used to accuse individual Nazis as war criminals?
I remember if I would know where they are, but how I don't know where they are. Like I know from Plaszow, I witnessed them shooting people and burning people, but I don't know where they are, and I don't know what happened to them.
What was the composition of the inmates in the camp?
In the camp, in Plaszow and camp, there were Jews and non-Jews. In Plaszow, we had men and women, like they were, only the blacks were separate, but let's say we were together. We worked together, only for a sleeping quarters we were separate, but the work was together. With the Jews and non-Jews. They were political prisoners there a lot, so we couldn't imagine, that we were in a town and they're getting packages and food because they were political prisoners, and after a year they let them out and we had to stay, so we couldn't imagine, that
What did the work in the camp consist of?
In Auschwitz, we didn't work. In Oberschlesien, we worked in a Weberei, in a weaving factory. In Plaszow, we worked in an SS-Bekleidung. And groceries and Bernbels and those things only they took us for days to work, like clean or do things like that. But none already worked. We didn't work already.
Describe the capos, the good ones and the bad ones.
The capos. We had the capo that I described before, and that we never saw him. What happened to him? With the strafcommando from that we had from Plaszow. That was a capo, a young boy. He must have been about 22, 23 years old, and he let himself kill because he didn't want to hit the Jewish girls. And we really didn't experience bad capos in none of the places, because in Oberschlesien we had no capos. There were only, we were 400 girls and we worked, and there were no capos. We had no capos. And in other places where we worked, a day, 2 weeks, we had didn't experience it. The only thing that we had capos in Plaszow, but like I say, we didn't experience that capos.
Describe the food you ate in camp.
In Auschwitz, the food was not edible, it was terrible. In Krakow, we had the food, men prepared the food, so it was beans and barley, and it was, I guess they never washed the food, because we couldn't forgive them that the food was so dirty. It was a lot, they used to feed us with a lot of grass. Real flowers, to pick flowers and feed us and put in soups, and that was horrible, the food. Then in Oberschlesien and Neustadt, our food wasn't bad. We worked with civilians and our food wasn't bad. They used to give us more bread, twice a day soup, once a week they gave us a piece of meat, which and then we found out it was horse meat, but we didn't care. They gave us every day a piece of margarine. So really the food was, comparing other camps, and I think Oberschlesien and Neustadt was the best food. Then on the way, when we marched, they wherever we arrived, the food, they didn't give us food. We didn't want food, just a little warm water or something. And in Bergen-Belsen, for 6 weeks, we had already, the last 6 weeks, we had no food. They used to give us about 2 ounces beef soup. But we were so bad already that every day we saw already that nobody, it's just from starvation, people died. They called us Moselmänner in Bergen-Belsen. And they didn't have to kill us. We were already killed. And it would have been another couple of days. None of us was survived.
Describe your daily routine in the camp.
And in Auschwitz, they woke us up 4 o'clock in the morning for Zeilappell. And we stayed Zeilappell till 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, until the Germans got up and had their coffee and counted us. And then they served us a little black coffee, which we felt some kind of medication in the coffee. And at that time we didn't know. Later we found out that the medication was that we should menstruate. So they gave us medication with the coffee. So then we didn't want to have the coffee. For them, they gave us once a day soup. They gave us a piece of bread and soup. That was in Auschwitz. And at night there was again Zeilappell. Again a couple hours Zeilappell. And if one didn't, let's say they couldn't find, there was in one barrack one girl, then they could keep us for hours standing, waiting until they didn't straighten out. So that was in Auschwitz. In Plaszow, we got up 6 o'clock. We went out on Zeilappell. They counted, and they went to work. We went to work. 5 o'clock, we came back to the barracks. Again Zeilappell. We went to the barracks. They gave us some soup, bread, and went to sleep. Once a week, they took us to Sunday, we had 4 hours off. We didn't have to go to work. That was in Plaszow. Oberschlesien, Neustadt, we worked 16 hours a day. So we worked like we got up in the morning, we went to work, and they gave us an hour off and back to work, and we slept, and they took us home. We slept like 6 hours and back to work. Like we were an hour before, we were 8 hours in the barracks and 16 hours in the factory. And in the other camps, we really didn't work. Like I say, this was only camps that they evacuated us from one place to the other, so we didn't work. And in Bergen-Belsen, the same thing. We stayed Zeilappell morning and night, and back to the barracks. There was no work. We couldn't work anymore. We were too sick to work in Bergen-Belsen.
Were people killed?
You mean were people killed that we saw? Yeah, plenty of people got killed that we saw. They were shooting in Auschwitz. We saw people they were shooting. And when they evacuated us, they used to shoot a lot of people. And in Bergen-Belsen, they shoot people, yes. So a lot of people killed.
Whom were they killed by?
By the Germans. But they said if some of them couldn't walk the way they want, they used to shoot them. They didn't keep up with the group, they used to shoot them. If they saw somebody associated with let's say, if somebody ran off, they thought they were running away, they shoot them. If, let's say, like we went once and we saw a man was carrying bread. We asked for bread, so they shoot a couple girls that we should not ask for food.
Were there actions in the camp?
I never seen any actions. Not in my time there was an action. That was the last year. People didn't have enough strength anymore for actions. Not in my, at least not in my group, between my girls.
Were there any attempts to escape?
Yes, there were a few people escaped. As a matter of fact, when they evacuated us, a couple people escaped. A doctor escaped, the woman doctor escaped. And another few escaped.
Was there an organized underground?
I didn't know about it.
Was there any planned resistance?
No, I don't know. Not in my camp, not in where I was in my camp. There was constantly resistance, but not between the girls that I was with.
Was there any contact with the outside?
Not that I know.
Were there any attempts at cultural activities?
Oh yeah, we had. We tried. As a matter of fact, we tried. We had obviously, we had a very educated group. We had, as a matter of fact, we had a girl that she was not even Jewish. Her grandfather was Jewish, and we used to feel sorry. She was an actress. We always used to feel sorry for her. Every day she used to pray, and she wasn't Jewish, so she was to pray. So she put the cross on herself. And we always felt sorry for her that she's not Jewish and she's in camp. Her grandfather was Jewish. So she was an actress, so she always tried to organize us for a little laughter. She was a comedian. We put up like, when the Germans weren't around, she always used to put up like little sketches, and the girls had fun. We had a girl that was a dancer. Wherever the German was away, she always performed. She always was dancing for us. So the girls really tried. We tried.
Were there any children in the camp, either hidden or in the open?
No, the youngest that we had was my sister, and we had other two girls, young kids that they were, one was, both were 30 years old. Two girls, 13, and my sister, 14.
What were the relations between the Jewish inmates?
When we came to Plaszow, the Jewish people were really, they couldn't understand that we were till now home and having, they said you were home and having sat by your own table, and they couldn't understand, and they really felt sorry for us that we came the last minute. They say, why did you came the last minute? So why couldn't you do something? Ran away, do something. So there used to be conflicts between us over that. But soon we said, who's Zemmer, but Zemmer, and we are together. And Auschwitz was very good, the situation between the inmates. And obviously, the Neustadt especially, we were a group, and we were extremely close. We cooperated in every way, really very close. We were girls that we were really worked. And if I needed a volunteer to clean the bathroom, because I had a girl with one hand, the girls knew the problem, and I had to say, girls, I cannot clean for 400 girls' bathrooms. And I always get volunteers. They always came to help because they knew that I have a girl with one hand. So it was really very, very good. And in the most difficult times, I feel that we had no problems. We got along very well.
Was there antagonism between groups from the same town?
No, never. We always helped each other in every way we can. For that girl that I said before that she never ate, she was only kosher, she never ate treifas. Her name was Heinze. So we always I always went to the kitchen to plead with the girls that they were working in the kitchen, they should give her a carrot, a potato, and they used to exchange to take her soup and give her bread. So we always cooperated very well with everybody.
Was there any antagonism between Polish and other Jews?
No, we had no problem. In Plaszow, we had the problem. They took us together and they made sail appel and they said they're gonna kill every 10. They're gonna shoot every 10 because we don't produce enough. So the Polish Jews, that was only for the Czechoslovakian, the Hungarian Jews. They made a sail appel. They said they're gonna shoot every 10 because we don't produce enough. So the Polish Jews really, they were long there, and we felt that they went to the Germans and they said, and they pleaded and begged, please. And we felt that they really, I don't know if the Germans were very serious, but we felt that the Polish Jews really helped in the situation because we were sail appel and they were the guards who were there to shoot us.
Was there any antagonism between Jews and non-Jews in camp?
The only place that we were the non-Jews was in Plaszow, and we really had no. We felt we are in camp, we are equal. That's the only place that I felt equal with a non-Jew.
Did you receive any help from fellow inmates?
From fellow inmates, we always tried to help each other. Yeah, I helped. We went from when we went to Bergen-Belsen, Weimar. We were bombed from the Allies. We were bombed, and it was the Germans went and they were hiding, and they were pointing with the on us to shoot us if we're going to go out. But they were bombed, our train was bombed and it was turned over, and a lot of people got hurt and got killed. And we said to Germans, just let us show the Allies that we are concentration camp inmates, and they wouldn't hurt us. So they said, that's you friends, that's what we want, they should hurt you. So a lot of people were killed and a lot of people were injured. And we really helped. We had to ask for help. They wouldn't give us help. So we tried to tear our clothes off and bandage each other and help each other. And some of the inmates went to look for food. So they went into we were at the station in Weimar. So they went in and they bought some food, and they never ate themselves. They shared. No matter how bad the situation was, but we shared it. Whatever they bought, we shared it. So we helped each other.
Were you ill in camp?
Yes, we were all ill. And my sisters and I had must have pneumonia because on the train I was very sick and I fainted a couple times. And when we came to Bergen-Belsen, we all had typhus. When we were liberated, the doctors always diagnosed me that I have asthma. But when I came to the United States, I was diagnosed that I have heart trouble. So I'm on the doctor's care now with my heart.
How did you recover in camp?
After we got liberated, doctors came to and they didn't give us no medication, just they served us some food. A couple, we were like in a hospital. It wasn't really in a hospital, it was like a barrack, but they got us, and just, I guess, our feet were very swollen. So they gave us only some kind of, I don't know what the medication they gave us, but they gave us no medication. They told us they gave us only a vitamin. So I don't know if it really was medication or vitamins. And our hair fell completely out. because from Auschwitz that we came to Bergen-Belsen was already a couple months. We had hair already again. We got liberated, our hair, we had people again fell completely, our hair, we were completely bald. So we didn't know, we asked the doctors, we had from Sweden doctors, from England doctors, and they all said that they give us vitamins. So I actually don't know if it was medication or vitamins, and they gave us, we were a liquid, drinks, food, bread. So that's what they tried to help.
Was this medical attention given to you officially, or was it secret?
After the liberation, no, it was officially. That was after the liberation. Before the liberation, we had no medical help.
Who was the medical attention administered by?
After the liberation, I think we had, I don't know the names of the doctors, but it was Swedish doctors we had, and we had English doctors, but the names I don't know.
Could you describe the clothing that you wore in camp?
In concentration camp, when we arrived to Auschwitz, they gave us one gray dress. And that was it, nothing else. We had no underwear, no brassieres, nothing. One dress, and that was it. And when we arrived in Plaszow, we didn't have to wear that dress. The Germans didn't insist we should wear that dress, but they gave us the inmates from the camp wore this. They had more, they could have had like 2-3 outfits, so they bought us some dresses, so we wore like dresses different. When we arrived to Auschwitz again we got our uniform, the gray dresses. So we had. Then we were three weeks there. Nothing was clean, nothing was, so after we went to Neustadt, then they gave us civilian clothes. They gave us like, everybody got a pair of underwear and a dress. Now, but the dress, if somebody got a small dress or a big dress, that was your problem. I had a cousin who had a dress, that dress was very short. So, and my dress was very long. So I cut my dress and I gave her, she should make hers longer. But we had again a problem. We didn't have cotton and a needle, so we had somebody the mother that came to visit her daughter, she had influence from somebody. She bought a needle and thread, so we managed.
What were the sanitary conditions like in camp?
In Neustadt, they took us for enclosing every week. It was no sanitary, like that there was latrines, and we went as far as bathrooms. And it was the latrines was water, so we could, whatever we managed to wash ourselves. No soap. And if there was soap, we were horrified of the soap, but whose soap we are using. We knew already that time when we came back to Auschwitz the second time, they told us already more what happened to other inmates. And in Oberschlesien-Neustadt, we used to, once a week, took our clothes to the laundry and wash and clean our laundry, and there the facilities we had better there. Previously, in that place where we were English soldiers that they were captured. So when we came, they took the soldiers away. So we had pretty good facilities there to wash. We had a big place where to wash and to wash our clothes. Besides, we were working with civilians, so they had to be pretty careful what we're doing, that we should be clean. And in Bergen-Belsen it was impassable. There we had already, the facilities were impassable. We didn't wash, we had lice, we had typhus, we were sick, we had blisters all over, it was a very, very bad situation. Some people were too sick to go to the latrines. Some people went to the latrines and just turned over, never came back. And it was just impossible, the situation there. People were too weak, it was cold, they were sick. We had no clothes. It was just impossible, the sanitary condition. There was already nobody took care of nothing.
Did you or anyone else receive mail officially?
No, we never had mail.
Did anybody receive mail?
No, nobody received any mail.
Were any parcels received?
Never. I never know, nobody should receive any parcels or mail or nothing.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Friedman.
You're very welcome.